What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at FPL transfer tips ahead of Game Week 30. So we're reviewing the transfer market, looking at which players are being bought and sold by FPL managers, and ultimately deciding, are they making a mistake or not? Should they delay the move, etc., etc.? We'll look at the fixtures. We'll look at some of the stats as well. If you enjoy this type of video, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button. We are so close to 150k. I would love to hit it before the end of the season. So make sure you hit the button if you haven't already. Hit that like button and let's jump into it. So we'll start off with Gareth Bale. And I think there's something I need to say, and I'm probably going to have to say this at the start of every single video this week. I know some teams are now showing a blank fixture for Game Week 32 on the FPL app, on the FPL site, right? The reason for that is because of the FA Cup games, okay? So any team that's playing in the FA Cup blanks, any team that is playing one of those teams in Game Week 32, they are now also down for a blank. Now, what usually happens at this stage of the season, rather than get put into another week, they usually get put into the same week, but in midweek. So if the game was on Saturday, it will get put to like the following Wednesday or something like that. So ultimately, any game that's been postponed on the app, or on the site, I should say, from Game Week 32 should be put back into Game Week 32. And hopefully that happens soon, because I know a lot of people are panicking. So any team I talk about which has a fixture that's gone from 32, I've just added it back in because I'm pretty confident, and so is Ben Crellin, who I've talked about a lot on this channel, that the match just goes back in there, right? So we're starting with Gareth Bale, 110,311 transfers out. Big miss in Game Week 29 for people that kept him. Obviously, there was rumours that he might miss out due to performances and that Mourinho was going to kind of overhaul things a little bit. I don't think he made a huge amount of chances in the end, or changes I should say, but Gareth Bale was one of them. He missed out, and now going forward, I think long term, he is definitely a sell now. You just cannot be confident that he's going to start. It's not like he's cheap either. He's not like a £6 or a £7 million midfielder. Like, I don't know, like a Lucas Moura, for example. I think he's around 7.3. Bale's over 9 million. You can't afford to hold that. Now, there's a few different scenarios at play here, right? One, he is playing Newcastle, and I think it would be wrong to sit here and say that he's 100% lost his place forever. But I don't think you can rely on him starting every single week. So in the long run, definitely has to go. But there is some merit potentially to keeping him for Newcastle, one of the best teams to play in the league right now, and hoping that he starts. And obviously you would want someone good on your bench. So for example, in my team, I don't own Bale, but on my bench as it stands, I've got Antonio. So if one of my players misses out, I don't mind if Antonio has to come in. If you haven't got a good bench, it might be time to move him on. Also, if you're wildcarding in Game Week 31 and you've got no other issues to deal with, you could just sell Bale and then you're wildcarding next week anyway. Maybe go for a Havertz, who I spoke about in yesterday's video, or something like that. Just do something a bit different, a straight swap to Son, whatever it might be. But I think it is time for him to go. His stats are looking pretty good, to be fair. Like 2.24 expected goals over the last 6, 0.4 expected assists. We are mostly buying him for goals rather than assists. He's had 7 shots in the box, 6 chances created. Quite a few quality shots in that. Obviously, we know, like the Crystal Palace game, for example, he had that header from really close range, and obviously did really well against Burnley. But outside of that, hasn't done fantastic. There was that game, I can't remember who it was. Was it against Arsenal, I think, where he and Doherty just got rinsed down that right-hand side. And ultimately that's led to him now kind of missing out that last game. So again, I don't necessarily think that he has completely lost his place for the rest of the season. And I can see some merit in holding him for this week. But long term, Gareth Bale is definitely a sell. I just don't think you want to hold him through Man United, Everton, and then a blank. And they're definitely blanking in Game Week 33, by the way, especially when you don't even know if he's going to play. So potentially keep him for Newcastle, but ultimately long-term, you're definitely selling him, in my opinion. So Ollie Watkins, another player that's being sold by quite a few managers. So 64,992 of you have already gotten rid of him. Now, like Bale, he has a fairly good fixture this week, Fulham at home. I know a lot of people say they're good defensively, and for me, they're not really necessarily a defence that I would actively look to target. Like if I saw Fulham at home, I wouldn't think, right, I've got to bring that player in. But I also wouldn't be worried if I had them either. So Fulham at home, pretty decent. Then it gets tough, right? He doesn't have a blank in 33. He actually has quite a good fixture. Whether or not you'd want to hold him that long is a different kind of question altogether. But Liverpool away, Man City at home are fairly tough. And yes, I'm fully aware that Aston Villa put 7 goals against Liverpool the last time around. I'm not quite sure that's necessarily going to happen again, although the commentators will keep on bringing it up, I'm sure. So 2 tough fixtures after this good one. Now, one problem for him, and Aston Villa in general is Jack Grealish has not been around, right? He's been injured, he's been out, but apparently he's now back training. So we're going to have to wait and see what Dean Smith says. Is he available for this match? If he is, definitely a good hold for me this week. And I think with a player this price, a little bit different to Gareth Bale is, you almost want, and I think this kind of applies to any player really, no matter what the price is, you need a reason to buy a player, in my opinion, not a reason to sell. Okay, now that probably makes no sense. What I'm saying is, if there's no other cheap strikers out there that you want specifically for this week, like Iain Acho's got a pretty bad transfer, Antonio plays Wolves away, it's okay, but it's not better than Fulham at home, I would say. If you haven't already got Bamford, then fair enough, he's got a really good fixture this week, but then he has 3 bad ones. Like, if there's no other cheap striker that you want to play or buy, you might as well hold him, right? You shouldn't, in my opinion, this is the way I've been trying to play this season, you shouldn't be looking to force Watkins out of your team. Yes, he's only got 2 assists over the last 6 matches. Yes, 10 shots in the box is good, but 0.65 XG is super low for that amount of shots. So they're all low quality. But you've got to kind of forget that's happened. You've had him in your team. It hasn't worked out. He hasn't got you any points. That's frustrating. But for this particular game week, it ain't that bad. And unless there's a player you specifically need this week and you've got a spare chance to do it, I would probably hold and then reassess next week. See what the situation is with Grealish and go from there. Maybe next week you want to buy whatever cheap striker it might be. But for me, it's a hold for this week and a definite think about selling from next week. Okay, so this is where having a YouTube channel and making videos gets a little bit tough, because I want to say some things about Jesse Lingard where I don't think he's that great of an option, but I know everybody watching loves him. Everyone's already bought him in. They're going to continue to do so. He's a good price. I fully get that. And he pretty much plays 80 to 90 minutes, right? So I'm looking on my other screen here. He's played at least 81 minutes in every single game since he came into the West Ham team. He's played 81 once, 86 once, and then the rest of them have been all 90s. And that is definitely a big factor, right? Because I often look at like XG per 90 or expected assist per 90 as well. But when you compare like Lingard to Jota, for example, yes, Jota's numbers are higher, but he doesn't necessarily play every game, and he doesn't necessarily play 90 minutes either. So that is something you have to factor in, which makes Jesse Lingard a pretty good option. I will say, 150,000 transfers in nearly, 11 shots in the box, very promising, like Watkins, and his expected goals is higher, but he is just over 2 for expected goal involvement in total over those 6 matches, and he's got 6 returns. Now, when I think about some of those returns, and I don't want to I'm not putting it down as in like he's been extremely lucky, but some of the ways in which the goals have happened, you know, I wonder how often that can be repeated. So the 2 goals against Villa, straight at Martinez pretty much, and for some reason he just didn't save them, even though he's down as this great shot stopper. Look what he did against Brighton, for example, and yet he didn't save either of Lingard's shots. The shot against Arsenal outside of the box, again, great goal. Love to see it. It's the kind of goals you want to see when you watch football matches, but they're not that easily repeatable. The assist against Arsenal as well. How Leno's not saved that shot from Bowen, I just don't know. So I would say he's been good, and he's been worthy of some of the returns he's had, but I would also say he's been a bit fortunate. I think it's fair to say that, right? You can say a player is a good option, but has also been fortunate. I don't think that is unfair on Jesse Lingard. Going forward, looking at the fixtures, again, Wolves away and Leicester at home are not ideal, but we have to kind of change our thinking on West Ham, that they are a good team and they are able to score goals. So I wouldn't let that kind of count against him. And Newcastle away is really good as well. To be honest, when we talk about West Ham's fixtures, they're quite good until the end of the season, but the majority of really good fixtures are at the end of the season, like the final kind of 4 or 5 game weeks. The next 4 are okay. Like Newcastle is good. Wolves and Leicester maybe not so much, but he's only 6.2 million. And for that price, there aren't maybe too many other better options out there. Gundogan, I would say, is a better option for sure, if you can be sure that he plays. Jota is another player that's going to get talked about quite a lot. And again, maybe not for this week, but from next week, he could be a different option or a better option than Jesse Lingard. So I don't really want to say don't buy him, because I think he's actually an okay option for the price, but I think you have to temper your expectations on how many returns he's going to get. I think he's been fortunate to get 6, but I still think for 6.2 million, he ain't a bad option. So you don't score a hat-trick and not get noticed, and Iain Acho is that player, very cheap forward, and again, one of those players that maybe Watkins owners are looking to bring in, and there's been a lot of talk about Leicester's upcoming fixtures, and 83,000 managers have already transferred in Iain Iain Acho. Now, for me, this is an absolute avoid for this week. You're playing Man City at home. Again, Leicester are one of those good teams, right, which can kind of trouble any defence. But the Man City defence is so good. I don't think, personally, this is the time to be bringing him in. The only real reason I would do it is if I had an injured striker and I decided that Iain Acho was someone that I wanted for the long term, so I just made the transfer this week anyway. Or if I was wildcarding in Game Week 30 and I decided that I wanted him long term, then yeah, I probably would just put him in now, whether I have to play him or not, or if I could put him on the bench, etc. Yes, I would probably go for him. But as a transfer in, for me, this is a hard avoid this week. There's not any player in the whole league that I'd want to bring in for a match specifically against Man City. After that, it gets a lot better. West Ham away is not necessarily easy, but obviously it's a bit easier than Man City. And they have just conceded 3 goals to Arsenal, we should say. And then West Brom at home, Crystal Palace at home is pretty decent. And Leicester have 4 good fixtures in a row pretty much from Game Week 32. The only concern really I have over him is whether he will keep starting. Now, I don't want to get into a James Justin situation where literally was saying that from Game Week 1. The guy played until like Game Week 20 odd, right, before he got injured, and probably would have finished the rest of the season playing as well. He's a super cheap price, so he is not someone that I want to miss out on. Like, I've got Antonio and Bamford as my cheaper strikers right now. One of them potentially could go for Iain Acho. The 2 players that really would have to come back to spoil things are Maddison and Barnes. Now, Barnes is going to be out for a little bit longer, and I'm not quite sure what the situation is with Maddison, but we'll have to basically wait and see what Brendan Rodgers says. But Leicester are playing so well right now, and the Vardy-Iain Acho combo is looking so good. Like, Vardy's almost turned into a bit of a creator. He's having his own chances as well. But I think he was the assister for every one of Iain Acho's goals against Sheffield United. I could be slightly wrong on that, but he definitely got 3 assists at some point recently. Again, his stats are looking good. 13 shots in the box, the most of any player we talked about today. 3.2 expected goals. Now, some people will say that tap-ins, right? He's just a tap-in merchant. Like, that is such a ridiculous, like, negative thing. Now, I'm not saying people are saying this about him, but in general, you hear that maybe about Calvert-Lewin, right? He's just a tap-in merchant. What better goals for a striker to score than a tap-in? You're in exactly the right place, exactly the right time. That is perfect. And it's like Antonio. He doesn't have too many shots, although, to be fair, Iain Acho has in this occasion. But he has good quality shots in the right place, right in front of goal, and that's what you want him doing. And Iain Acho is that guy. Now, he has, maybe got not too many returns, but he has got a lot of returns in the last 6. 6 goals and 3 assists, right? 9 returns and 6. Absolutely, he is not keeping that up. But for his price, with Leicester's fixtures and how good Leicester are of a team, I think he's a good buy. I would at least wait until Game Week 31, preferably until Game Week 32 to do it. I would also want to see what the situation is with Maddison and Barnes, see how they get incorporated back into the team, because they've played so well this season. You'd find it hard push for them to be kept out of the team. But with that many returns for Iain Acho, Rodgers has got a big decision to make, right? So by delaying it, you get to see what happens against City, maybe get to see what happens against West Ham, and then go from there. See if he's like kept his place, kept his stats up and stuff like that. Again, caveats apply. Like, if you're wildcarding in 31, yeah, maybe you just bring him in. But for those of you that aren't wildcarding, you can wait a little bit. So for me, Game Week 30, 83,000 of you. I don't want to say it's the wrong decision, but for me, it would definitely be an avoid against Man City. But definitely on the watch list for me, if you've got a watch list. And I would looking to bring him in, potentially in Game Week 31 or 32. There you go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. As always, let me know in the comments below which of these players you disagree with. Does it matter that Iain Acho is playing Man City? Should we just bring him in now? And what about Jesse Lingard? Am I wrong to say he's been a little bit fortunate, or do you think that's fair? I still think for 6.2 million, there aren't too many other better options out there right now. Although arguably, maybe we could spread our cash a little bit better and pay a bit more for certain players. But I know people are loving Lingard. So let me know in the comments below. Please do hit a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, and hit subscribe if you're new around here. And lastly, thank you to everybody that signed up to Patreon, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. As always, links to that in the description below, along with everything else. Like, if you want to follow me or whatever it might be, there's loads of links in that magical description below this video. I'll leave it there. Game week preview is out tomorrow. Team selection is out on Thursday. Captaincy is out on Friday. Deadline stream on Saturday. Loads to come. And then we do it all again next week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you soon.